And we should keep talking about democratic peace theory. So democratic peace theories, they dissect every war from long time ago and until now. They look at and they actually collect the data and they figure it out. Democracy and non-democracies, and non-democracies and non-democracies, they fight each other. But only democracies and democracies, they do not fight each other. They found out this. So based on this observation, they start to make a theory. That's actually democratic theory. So liberal states, the democracy, they do not fight war against other liberal states because of their liberalism. That's the main argument of democratic peace theory. So it starts with different kinds of scholars, but one of the biggest scholars' name is Michael Doyle. So actually, I have his book. When I was in States, I had to read. So Doyle arguments among liberal societies, liberal states have yet to engage in war with one another. That they come up with three different reasons. The first reason, Republican Constitution. The division of powers in democratic states, which produce checks and balance and electoral cycle, which makes liberal leaderships cautious and prone to avoid risk. So that's the one perspective or characteristics of democracy. So division of power, that means we have a law, we have divisions. I mean, the country divided into three, right? So we have a lawmakers, and we have a legislator, right? So we have a lawmaker, legislator, and uh, administrative. I can't I can't remember the word of it. So legislative branch, that's actually lawmakers, and judicial branch, that's a judiciary. So we have a judges, or we have a prosecutor, and then we have administrative, so executive branch in other words. So that's the separation of powers. So that's the characteristic of democracy, and because of that, they can. It's not easy to wage a war, but I'm not sure that's true. Which produce checks and balance. Checks and balance is not three different powers. So we talked about legislative, and we have a judicial branch, judiciary, or executive. That's not the checks and balance. Actually, checks and balance is a different political party. So we have a Democrat Party, we have a Republic Party, and I mean it's not a republic. So we have Democratic Party, that's 민주당, and then we have a Power of the People, that's 국민의힘. We have two different political parties, and they checks and balance each other. So it's not easy, even though the Democratic Party wanted, they if they wanted to. Wage a war, probably the People's Power Party will oppose it, right? That's checks and balance. And then we have an electoral cycle. So this president will have maybe 4 more years, and then later we never know which political party leaders will be the president. So then this president do not want to take the risk. So they will be more cautious when they wage a war. So that's about like the characteristics of democracy. So in democracy, leaders will be more careful when they want to wage a war. And second is collective secure arrangement. And third, civic hospitality. So let me explain civic hospitality. Civic hospitality first. I wanted to check whether it's record or not, but it didn't look like it. So anyway, civic hospitality is the liberal states tend to trust other liberal states. and to expect to resolve conflict through discussion and compromise. So that's civic hospitality. So let me explain the collective security arrangement, but let me read this first. So liberal states, since they know the other liberal state also is a liberal country, it's the power is also constrained. So they expect to resolve, make a solutions with discussion and compromise. But I'm not sure that's exactly about it because we have seen like what US did for us, right? So it's not always worked like that way, but that was one of the theory that Doyle comes up with. Okay, number two is empty. So I wanted to put like a NATO alliance here. So I have a dog right now. As you know, it's raining. You know, today is right now 8:30 p.m. and October 6th. I have a dog, and whenever it rains, my dog is really scared, and he tried to bark. So I had to pause it whenever he tried to bark. So it's really bothering. But I understand he don't understand. I mean, he hates the raining. He hates it. So and he hates lightning. You know, so he always act like that way. I believe your dog is the same. But anyway, so number two is collective security arrangement. So usually, the liberal state they come up with this international institution like NGO, UN. So they come up, they make this alliance to among liberal states. So the liberal states agree that an attack on one is considered an attack on all, so thereby discouraging conflict among them. So that's kind of one of the arguments of democratic pit theory. And I wanted to emphasize for the last neoliberal institutionalism. So democratic pit theory, it's not this book is only introduced Doyle, but I want to introduce more. So usually it's come up with two idea. One is cultural idea. Second is normative approach. What's it called? Culture normative approach, and the second was institutional kind of idea. So like normative or cultural idea is that uh, democracy, people democracy are peace loving, but it's easy to reject the idea because we have observed a lot of democratic country they wage a war first. So okay, that approach doesn't really isn't really valid. The second approach was about I can't remember the approach name, but I mean it's a how we know we understand how democracy worked. So it's like this. It's related to number three, the civic hospitality. That means like we need approval. So in democracy we need approval, and it's open. So let's say South Korea wanted to attack the U.S. Let's say, and then soon as we start to discuss, everything will be televised, and then we have to. I mean, the people should give approval to the president that okay, you can wage a war against the U.S. And they need get approval also from the legislative, right, the lawmakers at the same time, and they will be televised to the world, and then the America will notice what is going on in South Korea, and then for that they need same steps as South Korea, right? So they need approval from the U.S. From the U.S. citizens, and they also get approval from U.S. Congress, and it will take some time. So, but in North Korea, we don't know exactly when war will occur because it's by one. person's hand, right? So it's Kim Jong's hand. If Kim Jong want to wage a war, then North Korea can wage a war anytime. It doesn't take much time, right? Maybe he will just press one button. But democracy is not like that. Both, it's very time-consuming process. During this process, they can find solutions between the two countries. That's the beauty of democratic theory. And then another later on, the democratic peace theory has developed. And then one more explanation, democracies do not fight each other, is that because it's easy to detect their intention. So that means like it's not easy to find out the other, if country is not democracy, it's not easy to detect what kind of signal they send. But if it is non-democracy, it's if it is democracy, you have to open, right? So you have to open to the public. So it's a lot easier that the move that they take is real and genuine. So let's say like South Korea, they try to attack Japan, and then it will be televised, it will be open to the world. But do you think that Japan will think that, oh, the South Korea is joking, or it's not reliable, we never trust South Korea? They can act like that way. They will take it seriously. So the signal that the country send is more genuine than uh, any other country in the world. So that's the one more explanations to explain why democracies do not fight each other. So this literature actually come out in 1980s. It was really hot topic in 1980s because 1980, 1990s were very peaceful in international society, and then this theory became a huge evidence that huge supporters for U.S. to spread democracy to the world. So anyway, so let's move to neoliberal institutionalism. So we will talk about neoliberalism, and then we'll talk about this, and then it's we'll finish here, right? Anyway, so let's talk about neoliberal institutionalism. So neoliberal institutionalism come up with role of institutions. So they liberalists look at the world, and that they find out that not many countries actually committed war. I mean, we had a World War One, World War Two, so many countries get involved in war, but that was very rare situation. But most of the time, we didn't have a war much, and then they figured it out that how can then we can reduce the chance of a possibility of a waging war. Then they come up with this idea of anarchy. So they think that, oh yeah, right, anarchy is absence of central government. Then why don't we make central government? Then the international side is not an anarchy anymore. So that's why how UN come out to the world. So the idea of central government, establishment of central government, and international law actually come out the idea of this neoliberal institutionalism. So they emphasize on the role of institutions, and it will mitigate conflict. So yeah, I mean it's true because international system is anarchy. That's why states fight each other. Then if we get rid of the condition of anarchy, then people will not fight each other. Let's make it hierarchy. How can we make hierarchy? We can make central government. How can we make a central government? We can establish international institutions like UN. So UN can provide peace to international society. That's the idea. So ability of institution like the UN to define state role and act as arbitrators in state disputes. So if we have a problem, we can go to UN and we can find the solutions. While institution cannot absolve anarchy, they can change the character of international environment, influencing state preference and state behavior. So it's like that. So for instance, like international institution, let's see what international institution is doing. So let's say, what's the role of central government? So central government provide information, right? So government provide law. So let's say, oh, we have a law, so you have to follow the law. Otherwise, you will get punished, and the government will punish, right? So institutions should can punish, or they give up information. So, for example, when the U.S. wanted to promote free trade, they provide information. They say, oh, like if you participate in free trade, your country will get benefit, and your country will be wealthy, and then you will get a benefit out of it. So they provide information, and then if you agreed on free trade, so you became a member of World Bank or IMF, and then later on, what happens? So if you break the rules, then you can sue, right? And then you have to pay fines, or you will get the sanctions. That's punishment. That's what international institution is doing. So it's not exactly like central government. It's not as strong as central government, but it still can provide and make the country to choose better ones or non-conflict way, right? That's what institution is doing. So the beauty of neoliberal institutionalism, they accept the idea of anarchy. Yeah, I mean it's true. The state maybe they try to calculate cost and benefit all the time, and the states, yes, are very self-interested, but we can still come up with solution. That's international institutions. So once cooperation was institutionalized, states would hesitate to abandon it for fear of what lay ahead. So, I mean, somebody will punish, right? International institution will punish it. So, notion of transaction cost, cost to cost to costliness of information, the cost of protecting rights and policing. Let me make it. Let's make it small. So, sorry, here. Notion of transaction cost, the costiness of information, the cost of protecting rights and policing and enforcing agreements, reduce cost associated with rulemaking, negotiating, implementing, enforcing information, gathering, and conflict resolution. So, if there is no, if there is no institution, international institution, you have to pay for the transaction cost, right? So you have to, I mean, making rules or enforce rules, implementing rules. That means it's really costly, but if you have international institutions, then international institutions can manage this. So it's better to be a member of international institutions. And then so transaction cost, you don't have to pay for it, right? So I mean you have to pay for UN to maintain UN, but it's a lot cheaper than you make by yourself. And then uh, okay, so here's one more thing that I wanted to emphasize. So the liberal institutionalists, they emphasize of the role of institutions. They provide uh, they provide information. They punish the defector, right? And they worked like a central government, not as strong as domestic ones, but they still do it. But I wanted to ask you, without even international institutions, we can still punish, or we can still make states to follow the rules. How do you do it? I mean, can do you have any idea in international relations? So even though we do not have a UN, or even though we do not have a World Bank, still we can make country to participate in free trade. So I mean that's the homework that I wanted to ask you for for October 10th. And then here, neoliberal institutional states are central. They are agents who design institutions to advance their joint uh, interest. That means, so let's say the state central means they accept the idea of realism. So realism thinks that states are central, right? So central agent. So they are their main analysis level is state realism. The real neoliberal institutionalism is same from that perspective. And the second, they are states are the agent who design institutions to advance their joint interest. So state has their own interests. They wanted to pursue their interests, right? So they make this institution to advance their to have more interest, right? So so they they means not state, but international institutions. So they're agent. So who's agent? That's the always discussion point. So some realists saying that yeah, I mean that we have international institutions, but who's for? Who made this? I mean, the states actually made it, right? But who who directly made it? Maybe the U.S., UK, right, for their interests. That's actually the critics toward neoliberal institutionalism. So, like, realists thinks that I mean, international institutions, UN doesn't really work well because they only work for the great powers' interests or great powers' joint interests, not for weakers. So it doesn't really help for solve the problems, especially for small states. That's what we can think of. Um, and then the theoretical basis. Let's talk about the liberalist and realist structure of international system, material, static, anarchic, self-help system. So I wanted to compare between realist and liberalist as a whole. So realist, they are their in terms of interest doesn't really change, and its interest is very natural. So it's about economic power or military power, right? But for liberal uh, international system can be social and very dynamic, governance without government. So we have international institutions. And if we look at concept of security, so the basic principle is accumulation power. That means the more power you have, the more secure you will be. So always the state should pursue more power. And basic principle is integration. So for peace. And strategy, military deterrence of controllable allies, but in liberal perspective, it's democratization, right? So democratic theory would be the solution for peace. And conflict resolution is not a war, but other means, and rule of law. So that's the strategy that liberal should adopt. And the institutional features, the functional scope, the military realm only, multiple issues or areas. So not only military, but also economy or other social issues. So liberals, they deal with more issues in international relations, but usually like realists, they always talk about military. and creation for membership, strategy relevance, and democratic system of law. So, why do the other countries cooperate? So, it's it's alliance. From realist perspective, it's alliance. It's because strategically important. So why the U.S. choose South Korea as a strategic point or alliance? It's because South Korea has a strategic important point, right? But if it's not important anymore, then they wouldn't accept South Korea as an ally. And democratic system of law. So that's how became a member of liberalism. That means what? If you are democracy, then you don't have to fight each other. So if you become a democracy, then you don't have to worry about like alliance much. And international power structure matters a lot, right? So it's a reflex distribution power, most likely hegemony. So for a realist, internal power structure doesn't really matter, right? So except for neoclassical realist, it doesn't really matter. And then if it is hegemony power, then internal power matters. And internal power structure, that means domestic politics. So domestic politics doesn't really matter for a realist, but for a liberal, it's very important. So it's important whether country is democracy or not, right? If your country is democracy, you don't have to fight each other. But if country is not a democracy, then you have to fight each other. So that's why it matters a lot from liberalist perspective. And then if you look at the decision making process, will of dominate powers prevails. So dominant power's will matters the most when make a decision. But it's democratically legitimized or it's based on international institutions. Relations of system to its environment, dissociated perception of threat, served as attractive model, often for association. So that means here. So it means here that dissociated perception of threat. That means realists they thinks that international society as anarchy. So they do not accept other country as cooperate or cooperative. Rather, they look at other country threat. So they perceive other country as a threat. So even though there is alliance, so alliance they might not fight each other, right? So uh, the realist for the resolution of peace, they should have alliance, but alliance cannot last forever. It's very temporary, right? And then it's based on strategy calculations. And but from this liberals' perspective, they do not think that international society is uh, the fighting or war all the time. It can be developed based on institution, rule of law. So that's why they say serves as attractive model. So it's always possible that uh, based on law or institutions, they can it can other country which is not participate yet wanted to participate as well. So it's open association. So in from liberals perspective, other countries can anytime they can be member of a community, and because it's attractive, right? So it's based on rule of law and based on the institution, so it's always open for association. That's the difference between the realism and the liberalism. I mean, we will talk about more on this coming Friday, and then we'll definitely talk about constructivism. But before that, uh, we will talk about the box that we talked about, and then at the same time we will talk about the liberalism more, the the questions that I asked for liberalism more on Friday. So I'm really sorry that I was late for uploading the video because I was really lazy. I want to apologize again. It won't happen again. And then I'll see you on Friday. Bye.